really looking forward to this conversation with you, Ajay. Ajay needs no elaborate introductions. He's a man who created a market for computers in India when there was none, and this is in the 70s and the 80s. He's the co-founder of HCL, and we are here to talk about his lovely book, Just Aspire. But before we start, there's a very interesting story that I would request Ajay to share about how this venue that we are in right now, the venue of the festival, is directly linked to one of the earliest days of HCL. So Ajay, if you could just tell us that story.
Well, actually, right when we were starting out, those days were the license Raj days, and so we didn't have a license as yet. So we decided to start a small marketing company to create some cash flow. And that was called Microcom. So me and Shiv Nadar, the two of us decided to come to Bangalore to hire some salespeople for our small little company. And we came by train and landed up at the Bangalore railway station. And we just didn't know where to stay. So we spotted a hotel just across from the station. And both of us went and stayed there. But then how do you interview salespeople in a railway hotel? So that became a challenge. So we suddenly discovered that one of our friends was staying in the Ashoka Hotel. And so we rang him up and said, look, what are you doing tomorrow? So he said, I've got many meetings outside the hotel. So we said, why don't you lend us your room for the day? And that's how we interviewed salespeople, because if we had interviewed salespeople in a railway hotel, I don't know how many would have joined. But anyway, that's the story about Ashoka.
Right, and from then to now, there's a lot that has changed and a lot of ground that you've covered with your career. So in today's day and age, if artificial intelligence or quantum mechanics is considered to be audacious and path-breaking, what you did back then in the 70s and the 80s was also very audacious. It was a day and age when not many people knew about computers, and you went on to sell computer hardware. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, actually, when we were starting our company, the microprocessor had just made its appearance. And we felt that all the computers till now did not use the latest electronics. So we said if we took the microprocessor, we could actually change the world. So that's how we started the company. And then when we looked around, there were just 100 computers in this country, of a country of 700 million people. So we said the market should be really huge, because if there's just 100 and 700 million people, and that's why we started the company at that stage. Of course, the challenge when you start something so brand new is that people didn't even know what a computer was. They'd never seen one. And a lot of people felt that there were so many myths about computers. Computers are difficult to use, computers are expensive, etc., etc. Yes, our first product was expensive. It was 18 times the price of an ambassador car. But, those days gross margins used to be around 70-80%. Right. So it's not bad. Right. But then when these kind of myths came up, we decided to sort of break these myths with campaigns that we ran.
Right.
So when we were looking at this whole computers are difficult to use, we came out with a campaign which said even a typist can operate. So those kind of things you have to do to create the market.
Right.
And once you sort of create the market, the benefit is that you become a leader.
Right. And I think when you talk about creating the market, you sold computers everywhere, right? Right from engineering colleges to textile companies. I remember you've written in the book, like once one textile company has brought the computer, you started selling aggressively to all others because you knew that there would be a market for it. You've traveled also extensively as part of this job. You've taken HCL to Singapore, and there is an anecdote about China that we will come to shortly. And you all were 6 co-founders, right? In this day and age, I think in startups, on an average, we have 2 or probably 3 co-founders. How was the division of roles and responsibility among the 6 of you all back then, and how did you all work it out back then, early days?
Well, early days was very easy, because we all came from the same company, DCM. So we said, what was the hierarchy in DCM? the same hierarchy will stay in this company. So
Right.
Shiv Nara was the boss in DCM. He remained the boss of the company. And then it sort of worked out beautifully. And then, of course, since we were really creating the market and we had to sell from having nothing, it was very important for each of the founders to go all over the country.
Yeah.
So one founder went to Calcutta, another founder went to Bombay, I went to Madras, and that's how we really started the whole business of creating the market.
Right.
And it was very, very tough because, as I said, people were not buying computers till then. So with the kind of josh that you have as a founder, naturally when you create a team around you, that same josh gets transferred below, and
Right.
that's how you sort of create things. So, yeah, Shiv Nadar used to be in Delhi, and he would take care of marketing and finance. Arjun used to be in Calcutta, but he was also doing some tech type of work. Rest of us were simple salespeople,
Right.
and we just had to sell what we had. As a matter of fact, the first product that we sold was to engineering and research institutions.
Right.
And when we started out, there was no product. So we were actually designing the product then, but we just didn't have the money to last. So what we decided to do was to make a great brochure
Right.
of what the product will look like. And based on that, we started selling.
Right.
So my co-founder, who was from IIT Kharagpur, he said, "Don't worry, Ajay, I'll go get the first order." So he went to IIT Kharagpur, convinced the profs that, look, we are a bunch of young engineers. You must support us because you are an engineering institute.
Right.
So IIT Kharagpur gave us the first order, and that order was flashed all over the country.
Right.
So I went to IIT Madras and I picked up 6 computers, and that's how we started.
That was your first order, right?
Yeah,
The IIT
yeah.
Madras one.
Yeah,
And the book has very, very interesting anecdotes about how Ajay has traveled to the remotest corners of the country. Sometimes he's gone there and stayed back, knowing fully well that there are no buses or no trains that he can get to come back home. But making that sale was just so important. Can you recollect one of those stories?
Well, actually, it's all about Maharashtra.
Yeah.
Because my first job was in DCM was in Maharashtra, and I was located in Mumbai, those days called Bombay. And we discovered that the product could be easily sold as a solution to sugar mills. Now, each sugar mill in Maharashtra is located at very remote places, and to go there is very, very tough. But the only way you could get there was through a bus. So I remember going to one of those sugar mills, and I first met the chemist, convinced him that the solution that we were offering was perfect. But then he said that only the boss will decide, and the boss is the chairman of the company, and he will arrive around 5 o'clock. So I had time from around 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So he said, आप अपने हमारे guest house में रह लीजिए 4 घंटे तक. So I always used to carry a book to read, and I would stay at the guest house waiting for the big boss to arrive. Big boss arrives, we go and meet him. He agrees to buy, and then the order gets typed. Everything is done. We are done by about 7. But by the time you're done, there are no buses to go back. And I had to come back to Mumbai. So I went and looked for what I could do, and suddenly I found a whole bunch of trucks hanging around. So I went to a truck driver and said, भाई आप मुझको मुंबई ले जाएंगे? कहता मैं वहीं जा रहा हूँ. So I got onto a truck and came back in the truck. And on the way, of course, he stopped a couple of places and he had a snooze while I had to just wait.
Right.
But it was a lot of fun.
Right. I mean, a large section of your book is devoted to the importance of sale, knowing the value of sales, why sales is important. You talk about how it is an acquired skill set, that it has to be learned. And unlike what we think that, okay, sales is for those who are extroverted, you say that it's not. So what is the importance of sales, and why did HCL focus on that, in large parts?
So basically, HCL was considered the best sales organization in the country. And if a HCL salesman entered any customer account, the rest will run away because we were so good. Now, how we created these salespeople, why were they so good, is because we actually did tests to find out what is it inside the person which will enable him or her to succeed. And that's what we call need for achievement. And for that, we had specific tests that we would do.
Yeah.
And through that, we would find out whether he or she was good. And as I write in my book, we also used to do the pencil or the pen test with them.
Right.
So we say, okay, on the desk is writing a pencil. And we said, just pick this up and sell it to us. So that would tell us how that he or she could respond to a situation without having learnt that situation or knowing anything about that situation.
Right.
So one thing we really believe is that, and I really believe is that salesmanship is something that literally everybody should know, because I think it's a life skill. Just like communication, sales is a life skill.
Right.
And if you, for example, for every startup that I've invested in or talked to, I always tell the CEO, if you don't know how to sell, you'll never be successful.
Right. In fact, that pencil pen test was also featured in a film, right? A Hindi film, Rocket Singh. I think
Singh.
there was someone from HCL who was part of the writing
Yeah,
team there.
the script writer was from ex-HCL.
Right.
So you knew the story.
Right. These days we hear India has made a lot of strides in software over the years, and we keep hearing comments about, okay, where's India's next Google? Will a Google come out of India? Where's India's Qualcomm? Do you think India is becoming a product nation?
Well, actually, that's a transition that we must make. Today, we are very happy with the 200 billion services industry in software. But if you notice, the margins are coming down pretty regularly. And services is something that will always be very, very competitive. And so we very strongly believe that as a country, we must move from services to products. Now, 15 years ago, when I used to walk into a drawing room conversation, everybody used to ask me, why can't we produce a Google? Why can't we have a Microsoft in this country? Well, 10 years ago, an organization in Bangalore got set up, which was called iSpirit, and they went after this project. How do we convert software service, move from software services to software products? If they had remained within NASSCOM, they would never have succeeded. Because NASSCOM was all about services.
Right.
And they were making loads of money. Revenue was coming, we were getting better and bigger. All of that was happening. So it would never have succeeded. But look at what we have created. We have created something as big as, I would not say as big as Google, but pretty close. Because we have now created a digital infrastructure in this country. Digital public infrastructure in this country, the India stack, the finance stack, the health stack, all of these are products. And these are now globally famous. Even the United States doesn't have anything close to a UPI. So, what we have been able to do as a country, that we've been able to move from services to product. Now, we need to do that transition everywhere. So, I've been involved with the electronics industry from the beginning. We were product country when we started. We used to design all our products ground up. Everything. Hardware, software, relational database, operating system, everything we wrote. Then the policies changed, the world opened up to India, and we literally destroyed our product industry by wrong policies. So now what's happened in the last 5 years is that you must have seen a huge amount of electronics manufacturing happening. Karnataka is one of the largest. And all of this is low margin, low value added work. So if we continue to in that direction of just doing 4%, 10% type of margin work, how can we ever be successful?
Right.
So therefore, we need to transition very strongly to making products, designing products in India, and we have the capability.
Right.
If you look at India exports $39 billion worth of engineering and R&D exports. $39 billion. $39 billion is actually the transfer price. The real value of that will be $100 billion. So we are already doing engineering R&D exports of $100 billion.
Right.
And that's hidden in NASSCOM numbers of 200 billion.
Right. So we have started adopting a manufacturing-oriented growth strategy, but the share of manufacturing both in GDP and in employment numbers has remained stagnant for a couple of decades now. There are also a lot of systemic issues that we need to address with respect to, say, right from infrastructure, skilling, and even R&D. So how do we deal with these concerns?
So actually, basically, I have created a foundation with my co-founder from HCL, and it's called EPIC, Electronic Product Innovation Consortium. And our whole objective is to inject the product thinking into the country. So we have created a plan for India for the next 15, 20 years. And we want to convert ourselves from a services company to a product company. My concern is that last 15 to 20 years, we have lost all our electronic brands. You look at it, Zenith, HCL, Wipro, all the electronic brands of this country, Micromax, Lava, everybody's got destroyed.
Yeah, you call it brandless expansion.
It's a brandless growth that we have done. Low margin growth that we are on to now. Okay, so I think that we need to change. And that's why we set up this foundation to recreate this jazba of creating products in India.
Right.
So that needs to be done. And therefore, we are very passionate about, making it happen and working together with different states on how to make this happen.
Right.
So as a matter of fact, I had a discussion this morning with Karnataka state, and we are working on making Karnataka a product state. So, we need to have a vision like that. If we just remain low value manufacturing, we are not going to be successful. Yeah, we've created scale, we've created jobs.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, if Colombia comes with a better PLI policy, all of these guys who have come here will run away to Colombia.
Yeah.
So we need to create some stickiness.
Yeah, I think from a manufacturing strategy perspective and also from a demographic dividend perspective, I think India is where China was 3 decades ago or so. And you're right when you say that we need to leapfrog from, say, low-level manufacturing to higher value-added stuff, etc. But so do you think that the China plus one strategy that everyone's talking about will work out well for India?
China plus one discussion started around for 15 years ago because everybody wanted to diversify their supply chain away from China and wanted to look for alternatives. China very smartly worked with Vietnam to make Vietnam the next state. Why? Because Vietnam was close by. They could ship components to Vietnam and they were still making money. So a lot of people who thought that they were not buying products from China, and it used to say made in Vietnam, actually were buying Chinese products made in Vietnam. So Chinese used to send them kits, they would assemble them and shoot them out. You know what's the business that they have done today? They're doing $120 billion of electronic exports from Vietnam. So we missed that bus. So then we went to the government and said, look, we missed that bus. Now we need to catch the product bus. And China is the product nation for the world. So if you want, for example, all of you would be buying products from Amazon. The brand will be Indian, but you go down into the details of the product, you'll find made in China. Everywhere.
Yeah.
So you're buying a Havells fan, or you're buying Havells this, and Usha this, and Usha that. Everything is designed in China, made in China, brought to India, put a logo and sell. That's not what a large country like India should be.
Right.
We have to be a product nation.
Right. You've also had a very interesting experience working in China, and that you've explained in the book. Can you very quickly tell us what that story is all about?
Well, actually, we used to sell system integration solutions in China. And so one day, a customer of ours said that we'd like to come to your room to discuss the proposal. So 4 of them arrived in our room, and 2 of us were sitting this side, and we were chatting, and suddenly one guy got up and went away. He came back, then a second guy got up and went away. He came back. A third guy got up and went away, and the 4th, and so on. So after the meeting, I asked my colleague, after they went away, I said, these guys came to my room, but why were they getting up all the time? They said they went for a bath.
Okay. Why?
Those days, in China, there were only communal baths.
Right.
So they could never have a bath at home. So they were getting water, hot water, soap, my soap and my towels. So obviously after that meeting, I changed my room.
Right, and in fact, you are also a prolific investor in startups. You've invested in over 100 startups. What role do you think startups, which are at the forefront of innovation in the country today, what role do you think that that ecosystem will play in India's economic growth going forward?
Look, as per the Kaufman report in the United States, last 40 years, the maximum jobs were created by startups. So this is something that in our country we don't realize. We need to nurture startups, make India a startup country also, like what Israel has done. So we need to think differently. Today, everything gets stuck in finance ministry as far as startups are concerned. They'll get taxed, there'll be angel tax, this tax, that tax. All of this doesn't exist in countries like Israel and US and UK. They give you incentives for investing into startups. Okay.
Right.
So, for example, in the United States, there's a program where like a family invests into a startup, and 5 of you invest $5 million or $1 million, up to the valuation of $10 million, you don't pay capital gains tax.
Right.
That means for 50 million of what you've created, you don't pay a single paisa. Those kind of things don't exist in our country. We are always looking of, there are four companies in Calcutta who actually frauded the country and in valuations. So because of that, all the startups suffer.
I think there's also the problem of excesses that can sometimes happen in this ecosystem.
Yeah. But point is that for excesses in other parts of the country, we should not penalize startups.
Right.
Startups have to be the heart of growth. If you want a product nation without startups, it won't happen.
Right. So we are going to open the discussion out to the audience for questions. I just have one last question to ask you. Towards the end of the book, you outline your vision for where India should go if we need to achieve the kind of economic growth that we have envisioned. Could you tell us what that is in a nutshell?
Well, basically, it all talks about my dream for India being a product nation. But in terms of making India a product nation, I'm working with a couple of my friends, and we've got together and we've looked at how do we create the India of next 25 years. So we are looking at how India should transition from this whole services industry to product industry, and which bets we should take.
Right.
So we need to identify those bets, and as we create those bets, we will figure out where the value lies. Now look at, for example, we are called the world's largest diamond cutting industry, largest in the world. But there's no value there. All the value is in machines that the Chinese make.
Right.
We get some few cents for what the work we do. Similarly in garments, we don't make any money in garments. That's why Bangladesh took away our business. And the money is in making of those machines. So we are not at the value addition end of any business.
Right.
We are only at the low value, services business.
Right.
So that we are actually thinking about how do we create this new environment for the country, which bets we should take. Should we go into nuclear? Should we go into drones? Should we go into space? All these industries we need to look at. And then identify what we should be doing. And then present it to the government and say, we have a plan for you. When the next government arrives, hopefully we'll have a plan.